Welcome to the channel. We're Maddie and Gracie, and these are our snuggle buddies, Buddy and CT, that keep us company. We recruited these two and trained them to help us go around the country. These videos are about what they do when we let them out. Okay, enough of that, you two. In this episode, we're headed to Orcas Island. Our daughter and her family are camping out there, and we're camping in the area for about 3 weeks. So, if you're taking a ferry to Orcas Island, getting there is half the fun, aboard the Washington State ferry system. Take a scenic ride through the islands as you make your way to your final destination. You can drive your car right onto the boat, or board as a foot passenger and simply walk on. The ferries run year-round, and there are several sailings each day to and from each of the 4 main islands: Lopez, Orcas, San Juan, and Shaw. An international ferry allows island hoppers to travel between the islands with their car, bike, or by foot. An international ferry offers service to Sydney, British Columbia. Many visitors choose to leave their cars parked at the Anacortes Ferry Terminal. That's what we did, and board the ferries as walk-on passengers with their luggage, their camping gear, and/or bicycles or kayaks. It's a great way to get to the islands if you're making a short day trip or even a longer. Walk-ons don't need reservations, but you will need to purchase a walk-on ticket, very minimal fee, and the return trip is free. The ferry ride is around an hour from Anacortes to Orcas Island. Be sure to make reservations well in advance and arrive 40 to 60 minutes early. The largest vessels in this fleet can carry up to 2,500 passengers and 202 vehicles. The ferry's approximate speed is 22 knots or 25 miles an hour. Spend an hour with the breeze in your hair and taking in the views, and before you know it, you'll be stepping off onto the islands and enjoying your trip. As I mentioned at the start, the ferry we're taking is from Anacortes, and it's about a 30-minute drive from our campground near LaConner. Anacortes is the crown jewel of Fidalgo Island, is conveniently situated halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, and is the destination point for the San Juan Islands and international ferry runs. The island is known for its historic waterfront, 50 miles of hiking trails, and a mix of annual festivals. Anacortes is an island gateway, year-round. There's plenty to do. February kicks off annual event series with Anacortes Uncorked. The food and wine experience pairs well with romantic getaways to Anacortes. Spring ushers in the whale watching season, as well as kayak, stand-up paddleboarding, and boat tours under Deception Pass Bridge. The annual Tulip Festival brings in visitors from all over the world. There also is a busy culinary scene, and it's growing at all the times. You'll find a variety of restaurants with farm-to-table menus, scratch and house-made ingredients, and specialties like barbecue, fusion, and rustic scratch. As I mentioned before, this is a very relaxing trip, and you get tremendous scenery. As you look around, you see the Cascade Mountains, the Olympic Mountains, and the range of mountains up in Vancouver, north of the Canadian border. One of the things you'll notice at the ferry terminal and then on board the ferry is the number of people that come over to go camping. Backpack camping, bicycle camping. Some come and just bring their bikes and ride the island and then come back on the ferry. So it's a really neat way to access Orcas Island and spend some time without having to bring your vehicle. One thing you'll notice as you look at the ferry that we're riding on, there is ample space for people to be inside, out on deck, enjoying the fresh air and the weather. If it's not so nice or you want air-conditioned comfort, you can come inside, and there's plenty of room. There's even areas where you can sit in covered areas, but inside out of the wind. The largest vessels in their fleet can carry up to 2,500 passengers. With scenes like this, you can pull up a seat inside, a good book, take a nap, or just watch and put your feet up. It's a really nice, serene way to get somewhere. As you'll see, there's quite a bit of marine traffic going back and forth in various directions, and sometimes you'll see the other ferries heading opposite directions on their way back to the ferry docks. The ferry system can accommodate up to 202 cars, but as you start to mix in tractor trailers, campers, anything that can fit within 15 foot 6 inches, you can see how that'll change the dimensions and the count. What's really interesting is the main deck they have And then they have these two ramps that go up and around the outside, and they squeeze cars in there as well. So our destination here is Orcas Island, which is the largest of the San Juan Islands of the Pacific Northwest. So the ferry terminal will land you at Orcas Village on Orcas Island. So as you get off the boat, you'll enter Orcas Village and the ferry landing. It's a tiny hamlet with a few shops, a post office, historic hotel, and a grocery store. Although generally quiet, the landing, as it's called by locals, is a meeting place for travelers and commuters. And you'll also see that there's a rush hour every time one of these ferries arrives. Orcas Island is the largest and hilliest of all the islands. Orcas provides summer shell fishing grounds for the Lumi Indians until the settlement years of 1800. Farming, fishing, and logging eventually became the primary areas of commerce, but it has remained so for only a few of today's residents. One of the things you'll notice prominently is the cedar trees that we spotted almost everywhere. Your exploration of Orcas Island may take you to the quaint hamlets of Deer Harbor, westbound Orcas, and Olga. The commercial center of the island is Eastbound Village on the north end of the island, which we'll have lunch at. The population is As I mentioned, our purpose for coming to Orcas was to meet our daughter and her family who are camping out here on the island for the week. Pretty amazing view as we look back. There's a published driving tour of Orcas Island, and we're going to Eastbound Village, Mountain Lake, and Mount Constitution. Here we are at lunch at East Sound Village. There are lots of options for lunch and shopping. Further around on the west side of the island, you'll find Mount Constitution, which has a very interesting drive. If you want the challenge of a steep hike or a twisty-turny drive up the mountain, the reward of breathtaking views is at hand. Mount Constitution is the highest point in the San Juan Islands at 2,409 feet. You'll have a 360-degree view of the San Juan Islands, Vancouver, and the mainland, bracketed by snow-tipped Mount Baker and Mount Rainier. Not very visible here, but Mount Rainier and Mount Hood are off in the distance. This is Vancouver and the suburbs south of it. And lastly, Mount Baker, very majestic in the distance. I mentioned before we were spending 3 weeks in the area at LaConner Thousand Trails Campground. Here's a map of our park, and in particular note the road right in the middle because I reference that once we drive in. We're a few miles off of Route 20 on the Snee Osh Road in the Swinomish Indian Reservation. The campground is actually leased from the Indians and is in a nature protected area, so that is why you'll see so much brush. When we checked in here, we found out that they usually don't allow anything over 40 feet. We're 42 feet. Unfortunately, we made the reservation 6 months before. Nobody compared that information and conveyed it to us. So you'll see this is a fairly tight campground. It has water and electric and very few full hookup sites, which we thought we were going to have full hookup. As I mentioned before, this road we're on right now is the center road. It's kind of a middle ground to the left and the right side. If you go to the right, you go into really tall pines. It winds around kind of in the darkness underneath all these pines. To the left, It's all pretty much growth, some trees, and a lot of brush. And you'll see it gets very tight. I mentioned they don't have full hookups. They actually do have a pump out service, but it's $50 per pump out once a week. They do have a very nice clubhouse. There is a hot tub, and off to the right in front here is a really nice green area that goes down into the sound where you can see lots of islands and water. Unfortunately, there's only a few campsites that actually have water views. We get down in here, and this is actually blocked off by a vehicle in the roadway who wasn't moving. So we backed out of there and made another run at trying to get into an acceptable site. They gave us some suggestions. Wasn't great, but we did find a site that was acceptable for our size rig. You notice a pause in driving. Had to consult the map a number of times to figure out where we were. This is a full bathhouse right here on the right, and they do have a spot to dump gray water. Spot on the right here is where we went, but they did suggest we pull up to this corner on the left. It just wasn't big enough, and there would have been no room. The site next to us was closed because of a water leak that actually surrounded the electrical post. And with that water, we had a number of birds that came and took a bird bath every day. As I mentioned, they had a really nice lawn area. They had some chairs out, and they had an absolutely gorgeous view once you got out of the campground out to this area. It's a really nice area for anybody who likes to do kayaking, paddleboarding, but there is quite a current that sets up here during the tide shifts as the water moves between the islands. As I mentioned, this area is leased from the Swinomish Indians, and this point is a really sacred place for them because of this lone tree. Just a short drive from our campground is the village of LaConner. It's known for friendly people, diverse communities, cultural attractions including 3 museums, an outdoor sculpture exhibit, and locally owned boutiques and galleries. Another unique attraction is Deception Pass. It's a strait separating Whidbey Island from Fidalgo Island in the northwest part of Washington. It connects Skagit Bay, part of Puget Sound, with the Strait of the Juan de Fuca, a pair of bridges known collectively as Deception Pass Bridge. The name Deception Pass was coined by Captain George Vancouver, a British explorer, when he realized that these narrow waterways and intricate shorelines had fooled his crew. In April 1792, Vancouver entered Admiralty Inlet and began exploring Puget Sound. He first approached Whidbey Island from the south, venturing north of present-day Coupeville before turning back, mistaking the island for an extension of the mainland. Days later, crew members Joseph Whidbey and Peter Puget traveled through the pass from the west and realized their earlier mistake. The land was an island, not a peninsula. Vancouver named the island in honor of Whitby, and the channel of water at its northern end was recorded as Deception Passage. The views from this area are absolutely stunning. You can see the Olympic Mountains way off in the distance. Very challenging to find a place to park along this road by these bridges at different times during the day, and if you do it on a weekend it can be even harder. Had a really nice map, kind of give you an idea where things were, and what it says I just read to you a few minutes ago. You'll notice as we get closer to this bridge, the traffic is moving at a pretty good clip, and there's not a lot of room to maneuver on this bridge. They do run tour boats in and out of the channels under this bridge. There's actually two. We're looking at the narrowest section right here. The widest is over on the other side. But the current can be really strong. Not much for a guardrail here. There's lots of recreational boat traffic, sailboats, small boats, fishing boats, jet skis, and more. We hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you around the bend.